The S&P 500 made another new all-time high this week. So did the NASDAQ 100. And the Dow Jones Industrial also joined into the party, along with the broad market index, the New York Stock Exchange Composite. So what does it all mean? Are we in a new bull market, or are we heading for a fall here? In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the price action and also the market internals, and also some of the FAANG stock and the sector, and see what kind of message we could get from the market and tell us how to prepare for the coming week. Let's take a look at the performance of the indexes before we take a look at the other stuff. And starting with the S&P 500, notice the S&P 500 put in a new all-time high on a weekly basis here. This is a weekly chart, and you can see that it had a up week. And for the week, it was up 2.29% or 117 points. Top performer for the week was the Dow Jones Transportation. It was up 3.31% plus 512 points. And the second strongest performer for the week is the NASDAQ 100. It was up 531 points or 2.98%. And followed by the NASDAQ Composite of 455 points, 2.85%. And as I mentioned earlier, the S&P 500 was up 2.29%, 117 points. Now the Dow Jones Industrial is up 761 points, 1.97% for the week. The Russell 2000 up 32 points, 1.6%. And the weakest performer was the New York Stock Exchange Composite. It was up 263 points at 1.48%. Now for year to date, the S&P 500 is the top performer with a gain of 9.74%, followed by the NASDAQ Composite 9.44%, then the NASDAQ 100 9%, New York Stock Exchange Composite 7.47%, Dow Jones Industrial 4.74%, and the Russell 2000 2.22%, Dow Jones Transportation 0.71%. So you can see all the major market indexes are in the green now. Let's take a quick rundown on the sentiment and also the internals here. Look at the sentiment. We see that the VIX is still hovering below the 20 level, sitting at 1306. Now, the put-call ratio did come up a little bit and is sitting at 0.84. So it's about 0.75. So definitely the market participants are getting a little bit cautious now. And here, looking at the up-down volume ratio, it's only Friday that we saw a little bit of a selling pressure. Other than that, throughout the week, it was pretty much in the buying mode. And also the advanced decline, we saw almost 1,000 more declining issue than advancing issue. But over the course of the week, it was pretty positive. And you can see on FOMC day, it was actually up at the 1573, more advancing issue than declining issue. And the up-down volume ratio was 4.87 to 1 in favor of the up volume. And also looking at the new high, new low, the new high is still outnumbered the new low on Friday by 215. So this has been holding up fairly well. You look at the number of stock making new low is basically relatively low here. And on Friday, there's only 19 stock make new 52-week low. And here looking at the cumulative AD line is moving up along with the S&P 500. This is on the closing basis. Here looking at the NASDAQ. NASDAQ is similar to the S&P. And notice on Friday, we got a little bit of a selling pressure sitting at minus 1.7 up-down volume ratio. And the advanced decline, 1,279 more declining issue than advancing issue. So other than Friday and a little bit on Monday for the NASDAQ, the advanced decline was pretty much positive. And similarly for the up-down volume ratio. Now the new high, new low did pull back a little bit on Friday, but still it's respectable. That was 130 stock make new 52-week high versus 95 make new 52-week low. But again, we're still looking at this negative divergence of the cumulative AD line and the NASDAQ 100. Here's the yield curve. Right now, we're still looking at a inverted yield curve on the 10 versus the 2. And sitting at minus 0.389. And here we are looking at the 10-year versus the 3-month, and it is sitting at minus 1.166. So as you can see, the yield curve was still quite inverted. And looking at the US dollar, we see the US dollar is trying to make a move up to this 105. It got back above this 103.82 after a little dip here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the strength in the dollar continue to move up toward this 105.88. And here looking at the US dollar future, you see that it is sitting right inside of this balance area. If we kind of put a box around this right here, we're basically looking at this balance area. So we'll see, will it be able to come up to this 105.845? Or will it work itself back down to this 102.52? Look at crude oil. We see crude oil still holding above the 80 level. So I'm looking for this thing to see would it continue to bounce back up toward this 85, 86 area here. So as long as it hold above the 80, I think there's a good possibility for oil to move higher. So I'll be watching this high volume node here. If it dip below the 80, see would it be able to hold this 77.50. Looking at silver, recently we saw silver came up to this 26 area. And right now it's pulling back and dip below just underneath the 25 area. So we're going to see would it be able to hold this potential support and push it back up. Because right now we are looking at this possibility of this balance area here for silver. So if it could break out of this 2670 or 27 area, we could be looking at silver coming up to this 2850 to 29 level here. Keep an eye on this 27 level if it bounces off and get back above the 25 level. Otherwise, if it dip below, then look for the possibility of coming back down and test this composite point of control near the 23 area. And recently, we saw gold put in a new high up here. Then it kind of, sold off. But right now, it's still holding this 2151 area. As long as it could hold this low, we could see gold make another pushback higher. But if it break this low, then I'd be watching this 2128 and be very careful about this edge here at this 2089, because this is the massive balance area that it just broke out of, and it came up to put in a new high. So if it get back inside of this balance area, then we'd be talking about some massive retracement or potentially a huge retracement on the downside. So we're going to keep an eye on this area here. The key thing is this area. So as long as it holds above this edge, this balance area, make it above this 22 level, this 2200 level, then again, we could be looking at gold possibly come up and take out this high here. So this is the area of interest, is 2203 and 2128. All right, let's take a look at the ETF for the indexes. Starting with the diamond here, we see that the diamond put in a new all-time high, and it closed above the upper range of the weekly expected move, but it did not come up to this 1x of this extension here, or basically our balance area. So for the coming week, we'll be watching for this extension. And for the coming week, we have a upper range between 398.90 and 398.20. And the lower range is between 390.90 and 389. Now remember, this coming week is a short week because on Friday is a Good Friday and that's a holiday. So looking at the market, it's basically just pricing in for a test of the recent high here. Did not price in for it to move up to this 1x extension. And then for the lower range, it was basically coming down to possibly test this trend line here. So we'll be watching to see would it be able to hold above this 392.79, this area here, essentially this balance area, the upper edge. If it could hold above this, then we look for this upper range to get tagged and then possibly move up toward this 1x extension. Now, if the price come back down and come into inside of this balance area, then we could be looking at what we call a look above and fail. Then we could see a possibility of retracing down toward this lower range and then work itself toward this lower edge in the coming weeks. And for the SPY, we also see that it put in a new all-time high and also failed to come up to this 1x extension here. So we're going to see in the coming week, would it be able to get above this all-time high and come up to this 1x. And for next week, we have an upper range between 527.30 and 526.70. And the lower range is between 516.20 and 526.20. So for the coming week, we'd be watching to see would it be able to hold above this level here, this 517.38. And if it does, then we'll look for the possibility of take out the all-time high and put in a new all-time high as it come up to this upper range and see would it be able to work toward this 1x extension up at 529.65. Now, if it is unable to hold this this level here, this 517.38, this balance area, then we'd be again looking for a look above and fail. and come down and try to retrace back down to this 505 area in the coming week. So look for this lower range to get tagged if it does come in to this balance area. And for the QQQ, we see the Q also put in a new all-time high on Thursday. And then right now on Friday, kind of pulled back a little bit, although it finished green. And it finished just above the upper range of this weekly expected move. So for the coming week, we are looking at the upper range between 453.70 and 452.30. And also the lower range between 440.40 and 438.30. So you can see that it did not escape out of this balance area here. So it could be a little bit of a look above and fail. So we'll be watching the Q to see would it continue to pull back and dip into this lower range and test this high volume node here and see would it get a bounce back up. And if it doesn't, then we look for a continuation move down toward this 430 level. Now, if it is able to get back above this range here, then we'd be looking at a new all-time high and possibly come up and tag this 453.70, this upper range, and work toward this 1x extension up at 463.62. The IWM came up and got above this level here, this balance area, and right now it tagged the upper range and it came back in. So we could be looking at a look above and fail, then we'd be looking for a possible move back down. And for next week, the upper range, we are talking about somewhere between 209.80 and 208.60. And the lower range is between 201.50 and 200. So we're going to see would it be able to move back out of this balance area, because we are looking at this balance area and right now it came back in. So if it could move back out, then look for the upper range to get tagged. And I don't think there's a possibility that it could come up and tag this 1x extension of this balance area at 222 next week or anytime soon. So first thing first is be able to get back above this balance area and move above this 206 area. Now, if it is unable to move above this balance area and stay back inside of this, then look for a retracement back to tag this lower range between 201 and 200 area and see would it be able to get a bounce back up. And if it doesn't and get down to this area here, then there could be a good possibility in the coming weeks that we could see it move toward this 190 area. So those are the ETF for the indexes. Looking at the 11th sector in the S&P 500, starting with the XLK, the technology sector. See that, remember last week we were talking about the, watching for this to see would it be able to hold above this trend line here. And if it's able to hold above this trend line, this high volume area, then basically looking for it to possibly bounce back. Right now, we're still looking for this thing to come up and possibly put in a new high here. So once again, next week, we'll be watching this trend line here, because right now it's in this balance area. So as long as it's balancing, and right now, this is the critical support level here. If it retraces back down and broke this trend line here. But right now, we're basically looking this trend line to see would it continue to hold into next week and see would it be able to come up and take out this all-time high here for the coming week. So that's basically what we're looking at for the upside, and watch this trend line on the downside. Once it break this trend line, and we'd be looking at this high volume area and break below this high volume area, then we could see it come down, possibly fill in this gap. Then the key level of support will be down here near this 196, 197, this low volume area. And for the healthcare sector at the XLV, remember last week we were talking about this balance area here. We're basically looking at this balance and see that if it holds within this balance area, then we're looking for a possibility of the healthcare sector to bounce back up to the upper edge. So right now, it appears that it's moving toward that direction. Now, we don't know, is it going to hold? So we're still looking at this trend line here. If it break this trend line, basically come down to this low volume node here, then we'd be looking for a price to come down to this balance area, and we'd be looking at this area here for possibility of consolidation. So keep in mind this 142, keep an eye on this 142, and once it break the trend line here. But if it continue to hold, and we're basically looking at this high up at this 148 area for the XLV. And for consumer discretionary, we're basically looking for the possibility of breaking this trend line and possibly come down to this low volume area and get down to this high volume area to see would it get bounce back up. But as you can see that it held this trend line and it is coming up and getting close to making a new all-time high here. And on Friday, we actually got a gap down and pull back. So this right here got a little bit of a, where you could say this is a island gap here. So for next week, want to see would it be able to come up and fill this gap. If not, then look for the price to pull back to this trend line and test this high volume area once again and see would it be able to hold. Because we are looking at this balance area, and if it doesn't hold, we're looking for this thing to trace back down to this lower edge of this balance area and see would it find support here. And if it doesn't find support here, then we're looking for the price to come down to the next balance area and dip down to this 172 area here. The financial continue to show strength, and it is moving to above this trend line and put in a high. So right now on Friday, it seems to be putting in a little bit of a engulfing candle, a bearish engulfing candle. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a pullback in the coming week and possibly come down to this high volume area, or essentially come down to this trend line here near the 41 level. So watch for a little bit of a pullback for the financial to the trend line here and see would it be able to find support here. And if it doesn't, then we'd be looking at this higher volume edge here, somewhere around 40.35 area to see would it be able to hold support and then get a bounce back up. And for the communication, we also see the communication moving to a high here. And right now, basically forming a little bit of a high volume node. So we'll see would it continue to move higher. If it doesn't come down, then look for this trend line here, or basically looking for this volume edge here to see would it provide some sort of a support and get a bounce back up. And if it doesn't get a bounce back up, then we basically are looking for a price to chop around here and possibly come down into this gap here, try to fill this gap. So key thing is look for the trend line, watch this edge. That would be somewhere around 80. And if it failed to hold this edge, then look for some sort of consolidation inside between this 78 and the 80 level. And here on the industrial, we saw on Friday, it put in a new high here before it pulled back. So right now, we could see a little bit of a pullback next week and come down and fill this gap and even possibly come back down to test this trend line here. Watch this high volume node here at 122 area. So price could come down and test this high volume node and see what it get a bounce back up. So watch this area here if we see any kind of pullback. Otherwise, it's basically just moving up to a new high. But I do anticipate to see a little bit of a pullback next week. And for the consumer stable, we see that it is still riding above this trend line here. And right now, it seems to be finding a little bit of a resistance up here at this high here. So we'll see what it come back in and possibly pull back to the trend line and come into this low volume area between 74.50 and 75 and see would it be able to find support here and then get a bounce back up and then take out these highs here. But if it breaks the trend line, then look for the possibility of come down. And here's a little gap here, and there's a low volume node here, so it could come down and try to fill this low gap here, down here somewhere around 73.50. Look at the energy XLE. See that it came up to this resistance here, this pivot high. So we're going to see what it's able to move to here next week. If it doesn't, then we are looking for a pullback into this area here, because this basically is a balance area, and it could be come down and try to fill this gap, and that would be down here near the 89 and change, between 89 and 90. Now, if it continue to move higher, then look for this pivot high here, somewhere near the 94 area. And for the real estate sector, look at this trying to hold this trend line. It finally gave up on Friday. So watch this area here. I'd be watching for the possibility of maybe coming down to this 37.75 area, somewhere around this edge here, to see what it be able to find some support here and get a bounce back up. Now, if it doesn't hold this 37.75, 37.50, then I'd be looking for this thing to come down and watch these high volume node here to see what it be able to provide any sort of a support, and basically going to auction all the way down to this gap here. So, basically come down to this high volume. That'd be quite a drop. But I would first look at this area here right, to see would it be able to find support and then come back up. And if it doesn't, then look at this low volume area. And for material is still holding up here, but again, it seemed like a little bit of a evening star type of formation here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it dip down and possibly test this high volume node here for the coming week, and that would be somewhere around 90.50 area. So, and it could move back down and try to fill this gap here. There's a little bit of a low volume zone here, right? So that would be somewhere around this 89.50 area, and between 89 and 89.50. So keep an eye on that because it is quite a stretch away from this trend line here. So we could see a little bit of a pullback and possibly just come in and fill this gap here. And here's utility. It is still bumping up against this trend line, and it is inside of this pretty much this balance area here. So we'll see would it be able to break above this balance area and then move up and possibly come up to this pivot high near the 67 area, or would it come back down and start retracing back down toward the other end of this balance area down here, the 59 level. Looking at the other sectors, looking at the SMH, the semiconductor sector, this right here got a little bump by positive earning report from Micron. So we see this right here kind of got a little bump up, but unable to continue to move higher. So this could be putting in a lower high. Then watch this trend line. I do have a little bit of a steep trend line here. So if it breaks this trend line, I'll be looking at this other trend line to see would it be able to provide some sort of support here. And that would also bring it down to this area here or this here. So this low volume area here. So watch this area for potential support in the coming week. If it breaks this trend line here, in other words, get below the 220 level, then we could see it come down to possibly somewhere around the 205. Now, if it continue to push higher, then look for the high to get taken out, this all-time high, basically up here at the 240 level. Here we're looking at the home builder. The home builders also continue to move higher, although we see it printed a inside bar here on Friday. So keep an eye on this little gap here, and also this trend line, or basically this high volume area here. As long as it could hold this high volume node, then we could see it bounce back up and put in a higher high. But if it failed to hold this high volume node, then we'd be looking at a retracement back down here to possibly into this 100 area, this area here, to see would it be able to find support. Here's the retail sector. Again, basically it is still inside of this balance area. It's trying to break out, so it could be a little bit of a look above and fail. So we'll see would it be able to break out again next week. But if it doesn't, and it only and it come back in, and we could see a possibility of retracing back down to this 74.50 area. So keep an eye on that, and also keep an eye on this trend line here. There is a high volume node here, so we could see a possibility of a little bit of a support here when it get down to this 75.50 area. And finally, looking at the biotech sector, you see the biotech broke this trend line, tried to reclaim it here on Thursday, unable to do so. And right now, it is sitting right here at this high volume node. So we're going to be watching to see would it be able to bounce back up and reclaim this trend line here, or basically it just come back up and do another back test and fail. And if it break this high volume node, then look for this trend line or possibly this edge here, and also this low volume node here to provide any sort of support. And if it doesn't hold this support, then we could see it possibly come down to this 128 level. And here looking at TLT, the long-term bond here, we see that it failed to get back above this trend line here. Right now, although we got a nice little bounce, but we have to see would it be able to get back up above this area here. You see this. So basically looking at this balance area, right? So we're looking at this. Let me draw this in here. And we're basically looking at this area here for balance. And if you work itself back up into this 97 level, then that would be positive. But if it failed to continue to move higher and get rejected back down, then we'd be looking at the possibility of come back down to this 92 level. So those are the sectors from the S&P 500 and some other industries such as the semiconductor, home builder, retailer, biotech, and also the long-term bond. Now let's take a look at the FAANG stock here, starting with Apple. Remember last week we were talking about Apple, the possibility of setting up a swing trade here using this high and this low here for a potential stop. Unfortunately, the following day, the following trading session, that it basically gapped up and pretty much reached a low gap here that was a target, and that would give us a 2 R&R type of return. Now, we don't want to chase that, even though it pulled back here. It might give us a second chance to pull, to play for the next upside. But that was not the plan. So we basically, or at least I did not have the opportunity to capitalize on this move here. So for the coming week right now, we're basically watching for this low. As long as it holds this 170.29, this low here, then we're basically looking at this high once again. So if we could take out this high, then we'd be looking at the possibility of this 185.04 here. So I'm going to take out this high here. We're no longer interested in this. So if it is able to take out this high at 178, then we're looking at this 185. But if it failed to hold this 170 low, then watch this 168.49 low. And if that low doesn't hold, then we're basically looking for a retest of this 165.67 low. Now looking at Tesla here, for Tesla, it was able to hold this low here, this 160.51. Did not come up to close this gap here. So for the coming week, we are looking at this high here, this 171.20. If we could get about this 171.20, we might be able to see would it be able to come up, break this trend line, get into this gap here. So we could set up a little bit of a possible swing trade using this candle high and low. Right, so basically, one could set a stop below this low here, or you could use this low as your stop. So depending on your risk and reward type of risk management plan. So that's the idea, is to see would it be able to come up, fill this gap, take out this 182.87 and see would it get a continuation move up to this 205. And looking at Netflix, we see that Netflix, we're basically watching this low here, this 608 for the coming week. If it could hold about this 608, then we expect to see Netflix continue to push higher and get into a new all-time high by taking out this 634.36. And for Meta, next week, we're basically watching to see would it be able to hold above this 481.28. If it maintain the price above this level, then we could see the Meta to come up and take out this high here and possibly put in a new all-time high. Now, if it failed to hold this 481, then we'd be watching this 453, this low here. And Google continuous bounce here right now is continue to move toward this pivot high here. So watch this 153.78 for the coming week. As long as it hold about this 146.08, then we could see Google come up and take out this 153.78. Now, if it pulls back and dip below this 146.08, then look for this gap to get filled and keep an eye on this 143.59, this high over here. And for Amazon put in a new all-time high this week. So basically looking for it to see what it be able to continue to move higher and put in another new high. And right now, we're basically looking at this low here, this 173.52. As long as it holds this low, then there's a good chance that it could come up, take out the all-time high and put in a new all-time high. Now, if it failed to hold this 173.52, then look for this low to see what it be able to hold, and that's 171.47. And if it's unable to hold this level, then we'd be looking at this low at 165.74. And for Microsoft also put in a new all-time high this week, and right now got a little bit of a hangman type of bearish candle on Friday. If it pulled back, this is the low that we want to keep an eye on at this 413.78. If it failed to hold this low and get a bounce back up to take out the all-time high, then look for this low, at 401.26 to see would it be able to hold above this particular low. And for NVIDIA did not put in a new all-time high this week, but it is making a move toward this all-time high. So for the coming week, we're going to see would it be able to hold this low, right? Continue to hold above this low at 841.66. Then there's a good possibility that it will come up and take out this high here at 974. Now, if it is unable to hold this 841.66, then we'd be keeping an eye on this 771.25 level. AMD did not have a good week, but look like it is trying to hold this low here right now. So in the coming week, look for this 174 to see would it be able to hold this 174. And if it does, then we could see it might reclaim this trend line and come up to this 193.80. But if it's unable to hold this 174, then we could see AMD come down to this low somewhere near the 161.81. And for Supermicro, it also did not have a good week because it announced a secondary offering and that took the price down. So right now for the coming week, we'd be watching this low here at 855. If it could hold this 855, then look for this pivot low here to see would it be able to get back above this 1025 level. And if it's able to get above this level, then we could see the possibility of maybe making a move back up to this pivot high here at 1147.79. Now, if it is unable to hold this low, then look for this particular low to see if it be able to provide some sort of support here, and that would be 812. And here's a little bit of a low volume zone here. So got to see would it be able to hold this 812. And if it doesn't, then look for this gap to get filled and then possibly work itself back down to this 700 level. So those are the FAANG stock and some of the mega cap. Hope you find this video informative and be sure to smash the thumbs up to give it a like and also help promote this video. If you're new to this channel, click on the subscribe to subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching and good luck on your trading.